Hey everyone, it's Lindsay Lapaquette back again for another episode, I guess, of Live with Lindsay. And and there's my phone showing me that we are live. Let me just cut the volume there. So today we're going to be speaking with Adrian Starks, who's going to be talking to us about managing change in the midst of challenges. And I think we can certainly all say that we have had some challenges this year and a little bit of change. So Adrian is a keynote speaker, best-selling author, and Chief Communications Officer of Connect Now Business Network Limited. His mission is to help entrepreneurs, students, and organizations with teams who are feeling stuck, uninspired, or unfulfilled to become their own changemakers. He gives them tools and strategies to get out of the ruts they're in and empowers people to find opportunities within the challenges, no matter how stressful their environments may be. Adrian lives by his supportive changemaker philosophy that began with the desire to help others see that they can courageously make their own changes and become their very own champion in any endeavor. So as I bring Adrian in, I'd love it if you could just let me know that you're here watching with us today. Let me know where you're watching from. And with that, I will introduce Adrian. So, hey.
Well, hey, Lindsay, it's so good to see you. Thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, I'm so happy to get a chance to chat with you.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's going to be a great conversation. And thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Absolutely. So I like to always just start by kind of getting a sense of, how you got into this work. So you used to work in a medical call center, and now you've moved into speaking about change and opportunity. So can you tell me a little bit about the background of what has brought you to what you're doing now?
Absolutely. So before I worked in the medical call center, I was always infatuated with public speaking and inspiration and getting around and teaching people life lessons. When I was in a call center, I got into that 9-to-5 conundrum, as most people do. And I was there for 8 years working in a medical call center. Picture me sitting down at a cubicle with 2 monitors, and I can't talk to anyone. I'm just working all day on the phone. As I was sitting there in that medical call center for 8 years, I learned a lot about the power of unexpected changes and what they can do to individuals, what they can do to teams and management structures. And so I was intrigued by that. And what happens when you're not prepared for it and what happens when you are prepared for it. So for 8 years, I studied this trend and I became a leader in my own group by developing techniques that allowed me and my team to take on things such as a canceled clinic at the last minute. Having to call families to say that you're going to be rescheduled because of this and how to deal with that emotional setback by the family. How to create these new connections between the physicians and the people who are actually making their appointments for them, because there was a disconnection with a lot of communication on that. So I learned very heavily about how to manage those challenges and how to create better change so that the people that I was working with, they could feel inspired. They can also feel like they could take on the challenges that were coming their way.
Mm-hmm. So this is an interesting topic to me. And let me just say before I get into this, so for people listening, like I said, I'd love to hear that you're here and where you're listening from. And if you have questions for Adrian as we're going through situations you're dealing with that you want to, kind of hash out here, you can drop those in the chat and I'll share those with him. It's a great opportunity to pick his brain. So the reason what I was going to say was that I'm really interested in this topic because my own relationship with change has changed a lot through my life. I was raised in a military family where planning and not really deviating or changing from the plans was sort of the way that I was raised. And to be clear, not a military family, like my father's father was in the military. So but the lessons stuck. And so I, as a young adult, had a real tough time with change, really tough time. Mm-hmm. And then through various different life experiences, had to look at my relationship with change, and then eventually started consulting to Indigenous clients who are, in general, overall, I would say very flexible. And that really challenged my relationship with change. And so I do believe it's a skill that we can work on. And so, yeah, I guess I'm a bit curious to learn from you. First of all, maybe can you give some examples of some of the challenges that you were seeing in managing change, or that you're seeing now, in your work also?
Well, I'm seeing now that the challenge that people have is the inability to, as the key word that's being used in the industry now is pivot. But I like to say adapt, become more flexible, and to also accept the fact that there is a change. And I want to talk about that today too, because if we look at the word challenge, think about that word. Inside the word challenge is the word change. And also inside the word challenge is the word call. So challenges right now are a call for people to change themselves or their perspectives on whatever that circumstance is. And when we can look at challenges as an opportunity to change something or even a circumstance, then we can actually find opportunities waiting right there for us inside those challenges. What's going on right now is that there's so many unexpected changes that people are focusing a lot on the symptoms. I call them the symptoms of the problem, as opposed to just the problem itself of what do I need to do right now that there is a problem here in front of me? What can I do about that? For example, let's talk about, quarantine. A lot of you parents out there who have kids, that problems are always happening throughout the day, whether they're wasting something or spilling something. And if something gets spilled on the floor of the table, think about it. What's the first thing you do? You rush to try to clean it up before anything gets stained or spoiled. And that is the acceptance. You accepted what just happened. What's occurring is that many people are not accepting what's happening in their teams, in their management, in their businesses. And it's a lot of, well, this wasn't my fault. Why do I have to deal with this? Why do I have to pick up the pieces? Why am I the person given this responsibility? And the question is, why not you? Because I find in challenging times, that's when we rise to the occasion. But it's not always easy, because that challenge itself is something that is both a double-edged sword. It both sharpens us, but at the same time, it cuts us deeply.
That's a good way to describe it. Okay, I'm just going to get you to pause 1 second here. So I always leave my messages open a bit at first to be sure people can find us. And I can hear my messages beeping away, which tells me people aren't finding us. So let me just pop on over and see. Okay, let me just send a message in the chat. So for those of you listening and watching who have found us, I'll be back in 1 second. Let me just give people directions. Okay, I hope that will help people find us. I know there, or I guess I could have just said it, right? Why am I typing it into the chat? Let me do it this way. Let me do it this way. Oh no, if that won't work, because if people are trying to find us, they're not going to find us through me telling them on video how to find us. Okay, so I'm now going to close my LinkedIn because I'm finding that distracting. I think I've given instructions to help people out here. Okay, so back to the topic. So yeah, you were talking about how that need to accept the change. And so when I referenced that I've had a few life events that challenged my relationship with change, part of that was, I think, that phase of fighting what I didn't want to be, right? The changes like COVID, the things that I didn't expect to happen in my life. I didn't want to happen in my life. I had plans for my life to go differently. And yet I had these life events that were just out of my control. And in hindsight, I couldn't necessarily see it in the moment, but in hindsight, I see how much energy I put into fighting things that I couldn't change. Right? Wanting them to go the way I wanted. And I share your perspective when you're talking about how you're seeing a lot of people struggling with that acceptance phase. And I appreciate that it's not as easy as just saying, hey, I'm going to accept this and move on. But I do think it's a big barrier.
Well, Lindsay, it's never easy. And this is why I believe in getting real. We live in a world where people are saying, well, you just got to put your head down and work hard and go for it. It's not always like that. It hurts to put your head down at time and push forward through the storms. And so what we can identify that it hurts, identify that it's a struggle, then we can minimize the resistance of trying to get through it. So when you think about the people who are watching today and chiming on, I just said the word challenge, and inside that word challenge is the word change. And also inside the word challenge is the word call. So challenges are a call for us to change something or our perception toward that thing. But there's 3 steps of changes. First, you have to accept the fact that there is a daunting problem right now facing you. And the reason why you need to accept it is because if we point the finger, we look over here and say, I didn't do this, this is not my problem, then you can't take responsibility to move through it. So it's accepting. And it was Howard Thurman, the mentor to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and he said that at some point, we all have to sit ourselves down, have a personal civil war, and accept our facts. And the acceptance of facts is that you're in a predicament. Okay, now you need to do something about it. So the second phase of dealing with that change is there's 3 phases. The one is acceptance. The second step is addressing the problem, the challenge. So what are your resources? Who can you reach out to for help? A lot of times we have a hard time asking for help. I know I did. What resources can you read? What people can you reach out to? Could you look at it from a different angle, possibly? If you have a problem, can you look at it from a different point of view and address it that way, a different strategy? And the third step is embracing it, because once you address it, you have to embrace the turbulence that comes with it. This is maybe someone doesn't agree with your decision. Maybe you have self-doubt. Maybe the insecurity kicks in and you think that, as most of us do, especially in the fields of our work, sometimes we may think we're imposters, that we're not good enough for it to move through it. So you have to embrace that turbulence that comes along, because it was Henry Ford that said the airplane takes off against the wind, not with it. So if you want to take off and go beyond and excel above that challenge, you're going to have to face that turbulence of the third step. That is what comes with it. And it's not easy to do, but it's a strategy. It's an art to it. And I find that people say, well, Adrian, this is too simple. Well, life is simple. We make it complicated.
Yeah. The ideas are simple, but the implementation, I would say, is not simple. I just want to interject for a second, because people have found us. And so I just wanted to say hi to Jackie Ann. She's been looking forward to this all week. Well, thank you for coming back. And I'm glad everyone found us. And she said that she loves how you were saying, why not you? Bill is here listening from Toronto. And Diane here from Montreal. And I love, by the way, that Jackie Ann and Diane are now getting to know each other through these lives, or perhaps you already knew each other before, but I love that you guys are coming on here and getting to know one another. So thank you. And Jackie Ann saying, knowing your resources. She's getting better at asking for help. And she's telling her team, don't suffer in silence. If you're stuck, let me know. How can I help?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to go back to what you said about embracing the turbulence, because I think that is important. And it just really stood out to me as part of what is so hard, because I think when you choose or accept to embrace the turbulence, it's like the grief process, right? Of what isn't the way you wanted it to be. And so it brings up hard emotions. And I think that's part of where we get stuck, not wanting to look at that. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I agree with you. That's the grievance part of, and I call it discarding things. You take what is useful and you discard what is not. And you know what? I actually wanted to do something today. I'm always notorious for doing creative things. I want to share something with you guys. All right. So for my people out here, this is a walnut, and I love walnuts. One of my favorite things to do in the morning is to wake up after my fasting and crack a handful of walnuts to eat them. They're good for the brain, good for the body. But there is a problem here with this walnut. It's the shell. Let me bring in the view here. Okay. So problems are a lot like this. Inside that challenge is an opportunity, but you've got to crack it open in order to get the goodies of it. And so I'm going to take you through that 3 phases again that I talked about earlier. So here's your problem. You got a walnut. You want the walnut out of the shell. Great. Okay. So that's the first step, is accepting the fact that there is a problem. All right. This is the problem. Now, my second step, addressing it. How do I get the walnut out of this shell? Some people have different resources. Some will just crack it with their hands, crack it on the counter. Some will use a device that I have here, crack it open. Some may even take a hammer to it. One's different, but how would you address it? Maybe you need someone to help you, to show you how to open it. Now, once you open this walnut, you have taken that. This is what happens. Now you have a handful of walnuts and shells. This is the embracing part. Now that you've cracked open the challenge, the opportunities are right there. But now you have to discard the shells, those things that don't matter, to take out the things that do matter so that you can focus on them. It's a clear example of moving through a challenge. You've got to break it open first. You got to identify the shell. That is the challenge. That is the problem. Then you got to figure out, okay, how do I get this solution? How do you crack it open? And once you crack it open, the third step is look at all of this debris that's left over from the shell. You don't need this stuff. Well, take out what you need and take and get rid of the rest of the stuff. And a lot of times the debris that we have from the embracing part is negativity from other people. If you're in management positions, as I was, you will make decisions sometimes that people will not like, but you're doing it for the better good because you have to resolve a problem. So you have to discard sometimes the emotions that come with that. Sometimes you may have to have a conversation with a friend and you walk through those two steps. Now you're embracing the friend maybe being upset with you or disagreeing with you. We have to learn how to just embrace that part of discomfort so that we can move through the challenge into the core of the opportunity. And that's how we can deal effectively with change. And as you mentioned, Lindsay, the applying it is not easy. It never is. But if you approach it with a strategy of those 3 steps I mentioned, then you're going to walk through it a lot better than those who are just staring at this mountain saying, when will it go away? Or I hope things get better.
Yeah.
Or I wish things would get better.
Yeah, I agree. So Arlene here is saying, keep what you need and get rid of the rest, which is, a good way to summarize the example you shared there. So I do want to share, this is a bit of a tangent, but I did record a podcast episode with someone named Luis Gonzalez. You can find it lindsaylapaquette.com/podcast. And the reason I'm sharing this here is it's on the victim mindset. And it was a really neat interview about how we can get so stuck in that victim mindset of, I don't want it to be like this. Why is this happening to me? Why are the stores still not opening? Why am I still having to stay at home? And it's just for everyone listening, I thought that might be an interesting thing to take a peek at if you want to learn more about that. And I want to just loop back a little bit here to your formula or your steps. So I want to ask everyone listening, you don't have to share this in the chat. You're welcome to if you feel comfortable. But what is something, it doesn't have to be through coronavirus, but I think coronavirus is has been a pretty big change for everyone. So what is something that you would identify as something you would want to work on accepting better? So that first step. What's that thing that you find yourself getting stuck on? I know for myself, I'll go ahead here and throw in that I sometimes get stuck on my frustration around trying to juggle homeschooling with my business and all the rest. And I try to remind myself, this is a choice I made and there are reasons I have made it. And I wouldn't go back on the decision. And so, to work on that accepting of this is the reality. Yes, you need to make adjustments you hadn't planned, has been something that I'm trying to be conscious of since school started in September. And so, I'd love to hear from everyone listening if you're willing to share. And maybe, Adrian, you'd be willing to share an example from your own life. Not to put you on the spot. You don't have to.
Oh, I'm used to being put on the spot.
Okay.
Speakers, we're always on this. So I think the challenge for me has been the speaking world, because as a speaker, we can all attest that, I'm a traveling speaker, so I haven't been able to travel much or even be on stages or any boardrooms. That has been hard for me because I love doing that. And being at home, I love my family so much, but they don't understand social distancing.
That's
Yeah, get the space, right? Like, I just need a little breeze. Come up for some fresh air for a second. They're like, no.
Yeah. At first, I was like, this is an introvert's heaven. And then I was like, oh no, like my kids are around all the time. It's not.
No, I'll be real here. So, most parents have done this. They've escaped to the bathroom, and then you've seen these little hands go under the door, like, hey, we know you're there. So that has been hard for me. Yeah. But I would say being in quarantine and not being able to travel, not being able to see people in person, it's been a really big thing. And I went through a couple spells where I felt like I wasn't doing much. I felt like I was not contributing the way that I know I could contribute. And I had to sit down with myself and have a conversation and say, what do you have with you right now that you can use to contribute? Going back to the addressing the problem. And I said, okay, I have the internet, I have resources, I have cameras, I have computers, I have good microphones. All right, well, let's get to work on creating more videos. Let's get to work on, doing interviews, getting on interviews, podcasting. Let's get to work. Let's do it from virtual stage as opposed to the physical stage. So that was a huge shift for me, because I had to tell myself that I was still doing my part.
Yeah. And I think that acceptance stage leads to that ability to then shift your thinking, right? And see the other opportunities. And I know for me, sometimes it takes, so your second step there, addressing, sometimes it does take conversations with others or different things to help me be able to get out of, my more negative mindset and shift into one where you can see the possibilities in a situation that you didn't necessarily want to be in. And I think I do see it as being so, like when I watch what's going on in the world and in the business world, and there certainly are factors based on the industry people are in that are impacting their reality. But I also think there's a piece of how much people are or are not staying stuck in what they want to be happening versus what is happening and how you can then shift. So I think those are super important pieces. I just want to go back here to the chat because there are a few comments, questions. I always just want to be sure I catch any questions. Jackie Ann saying she just had a conversation about victim mindset with one of her trainers. Arlene, you asked for the link, I think, to the podcast episode, and I shared it. I don't know if that pops up on LinkedIn or Facebook from where I am, but if it doesn't, I'll send it along later. Jackie Ann saying she's going through an integration and is struggling with new processes and getting comfortable being unsure and uncomfortable while still leading her team. Yeah. So let's talk about that, like even beyond the pandemic, right? Managing just change when we don't know what we're doing, because that's a tough space to be in when you're a leader.
It's a huge space to be in. I think the best thing that a leader can do is to be honest with your team. I had the best experience with my team when I sat down with them and I would say, I am not sure right now how we're going to handle this, but if we put our heads together, we're going to figure out something to do. We're going to find a solution. And my objective with all of you is to find ways that you can help that are at your best strength. And so my team was great about jumping on board and helping. As a leader, we're in a time now where it is not about being flawless. It's about being vulnerable and open to suggestion. Leadership
Which is
now has
awesome that this shift is happening. Yeah.
It's happening. People want the real person. They're tired of this camouflage approach. They want to know, do you care about them in the situation? And as a leader, your strength often at times will become your ability to sit and be able to be open to what the people around you are saying, because it's your people that allow you to be able to lead. If you don't have people, you can't lead.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I think I fully agree with you that transparency around, I'm also uncomfortable with this change and I'm not sure exactly how to do it. And I think sometimes people are scared to show that because we think, like I think back earlier in my career and I felt it made me lose credibility to not have all the answers. And so I'd pretend, right? I'd just nod, or make things up. I remember early in my career giving answers while thinking, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm talking about. Like, I hope they're buying this. In hindsight, I'm sure they so picked up on the fact that I was just blowing smoke. So yeah, I think people can read the difference. And I think this shift is great and really well needed. Jackie Ann's transparency, honesty, and communication, which I know you're all about. So she says you're speaking to her core. You have to care. Yeah. It's the future of leadership in the world, I think. And she also has a suggestion here for you to look at a friend of hers, Jennifer Foxworthy, who's traveled to speak and has turned her business into a virtual format. So you can grab that name in the chat later on. So I just want to come back to your formula here, because I always like people to have takeaways. So I hope you've reflected a little bit on what that thing is that you want to work on accepting a little bit more. And so my next question to you, to the audience, or whatever we would call this, everyone participating, would be to reflect on what one thing can you do then to address that. And so do you have any other, you've given a few ideas, do you have any other concrete tips on how to work through that phase of addressing that issue that you're struggling with around change?
So the idea, well, one structure is changing your mindset and your perspective. I mean, I think that when you're approaching anything, you have to have what we call a growth mindset. Carol Dweck talked about this in her book called Mindset, a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. So with any given situation, you have to be open to suggestion, meaning that suggestion from someone else, suggestion from maybe even ideas that you have towards situation. I think a lot of times we create a mental block and we keep ourselves from being open to suggestion. So changes, there's multiple strategies of change. And it's not just one thing as a cure-all. That's why I have 3 steps. But within those 3 steps, there are things that you have to do in those 3 steps that are going to allow you to effectively move through it. I would say that the main priority with change is to understand that key word again. I said challenge. When you have a challenge, we must see the problem not as this big monster that's going to swallow us and take us off into the woods somewhere. We should see the problem as the opportunities inside, asking you, calling you to step to the challenge of resolving it, of opening it up. You have to be like a scientist, an observer. Be curious about the problem. Don't be afraid of it. Don't run away from it. Be very curious about it. And be curious about who can help you with it or what resources you can find for it. Because problems are always going to be there for us. And when you find yourself not having problems or challenges, you have to ask yourself, am I in my comfort zone too much?
Right. Right. And my experience has been that when I'm being really resistant around the ideas of addressing stuff, it's usually I'm not at acceptance yet, right? Like I'm still in that phase of needing to feel heard. Like I need the challenges to be validated, and then I can get to that step of, okay, now I'm ready to address them. And so for anyone who's, in a management or leadership position here, I find that helps. If you find someone's getting really, really stuck and resistant to the change, often taking a step back to understand, their experience of it and their concerns can help. So I'm just going to go back into the comments here. No one could have seen 12 months ago that we would be here right now. Can you imagine, right? So I looked at the post that I posted. So I was in Arizona when the pandemic hit sort of North America, Canada, like the whole March issue. And I came across the post that I posted a few days later, just the other day. And I actually thought I'm going to repost this like on the 1-year anniversary. And just reading it was fascinating. So I can't remember the whole thing, but it was something around, there you are with your calendar, just hitting delete, delete, delete. And that was literally the experience, right? Like overnight, your calendar, you as a speaker, right? Everything, you just got wiped out. And so, yeah, I still have a hard time wrapping my head around how the world can change so much in a year. And yet, as Jackie Ann said, we are dealing with it well. And I think it's important to acknowledge that despite the challenges and despite, I'm sure we all still get into that headspace a bit sometimes of frustration. But for the most part, there's been massive resilience.
Well, there has been. I always make this joke that, when 2021 arrived, everyone was like, okay, it's going to be different. I'm like, no, 2021 is just four numbers.
I thought the same thing.
No. Yeah. The things in 2020 came into 2021 holding our hands saying, hey, let's keep playing together. And we're like, we don't want to play anymore. So it's really looking at 2021 from a different perspective and finding out how you can be more innovative. Guys, take risk. Take risk on some of these challenges. Go a different direction with it. Try something new. Get yourself out of this game of just thinking that it has to be this way. You have to get outside that comfort zone, because outside of that is where adventures are. And where you find adventures, you find better experiences. Experiences allow you to make better decisions. So in 2021, we have to move with our challenges. Even if they're holding us by the ankle, we still have to keep moving with them, because here's the thing. You're always going to have problems and challenges. You're not going to be a person that's void of that. It's going to happen. And in your business, in your line of leadership, it's a part of it.
So I also was, as you were talking there about trying new things, like I do think the pandemic has forced that upon, many who do not particularly enjoy that. But I also think the experience of having to do it also makes you better at it, and so I see where, like, as I said earlier in the live, when I think people couldn't find us, about how I used to have a really hard time with change. And now I kind of love it, to be honest. But dealing with it has become easier, because you learn to adapt, and you learn new skills. And I think that's one of the beauties of one of the silver linings, I guess, of the pandemic. So I just want to go back here. Sorry. Just going to go into the comments again. So Diane saying, we all worry that not knowing is a weakness. Asking for help shows our human side. Yeah, so important. And I think it also gives others permission to feel okay asking for help. So I think that's really key. Diane, or Jackie Ann here saying authenticity, great word, Diane. So I'll just throw in that I'm redoing my marketing, and my new stuff is authentic leadership. So I'm happy to hear that resonates with you, Jackie Ann. Tri-City Transition Society. When I'm feeling resistance, it means that I need to go mining to the core feelings and emotions that I'm resisting.
Ooh,
yes.
I like that. Yes. To go mining to find the core.
I
love that sentence.
That's awesome.
I felt that one.
And Arlene is saying that she relates to the validation part, even though she's not in management or leadership. And because we're humans, right? So whether we're in leadership or not, I mean, I'm not in leadership either. I work with leaders, but I'm not in a leadership. I guess I kind of am. I have my own company, but like not a big team, And so I think it's pertinent to everyone. And Murad is saying, thank you. So, okay, so I had a couple other questions, and for people listening, throw your questions in the chat. If you have anything specific that you want to hear from Adrian, I'll prioritize your questions over mine. So one of the things you talked about when we spoke earlier was the importance of surrounding ourselves with change makers. And I want to delve into that a little bit and find out the impact that has.
What I mean by surrounding yourself with change makers are people who are willing to, as I mentioned before, take some risk. They're willing to act out the things they say they're doing. There's a lot of people I've known in the past, they would say one thing and they didn't do it. They didn't follow through. We know those people, right? They say they're going to do this and they don't really follow through. They do something on a consistent basis. Surround yourself with people who are optimistic. They're not just positive. They're optimistic, meaning they act out their positivity, even through the struggles. And these are the change makers. They look at things from a different perspective. They have a different outlook on life. And they're there to also show you an example of what you want to be and do. I don't surround myself with people who are non-action takers, because then they'll put me into a state of inertia and I won't take action. So I'm very cautious about who I surround myself around. What are they doing? What are their goals? What are their objectives? And here's a big thing. What is their personal motive? People talk about motivation, but it's about the personal motive. What is that person's motive for being next to you? What is your motive for being next to them? What is your motive together? Because that's how we truly operate. If I tell you today, these 3 steps that I just shared with you, and you don't have a motive to change, or you don't want to change, it's not going to happen for you then. And that's the power of human choice. We don't have to do anything, so that's okay. This is why I always say, I don't change people. I provide resources to show them the value of changing their environments and themselves. You have to have those resources. So I want to go back to authenticity just quickly. And you said that, authentic leadership is so important. And this is the sacrifice that I made. When I first started in the industry of speaking, I was the suit and tie guy. I thought I had to wear a tie and suit all the time. No pun intended to anyone who does, but that's not my style.
Right.
And I tried that. So as I wore those suits, I wasn't speaking my language because I was trying to be somebody I wasn't. And it was a constant failure.
Yeah.
Constant failure. Then at some point I realized that, okay, I have to be me. I can still dress up, but I'm not wearing a suit and tie. I don't have to have a clean cut face. I can wear my beard. I can wear my earrings and be just as intelligent as the ones who don't.
Yeah.
And guess what it's done for me? It's brought me here. It's brought me to many places because of authenticity. People want to know the real person. They want to identify. It's a know, like, and trust factor.
Yeah, I relate to that a lot because when I think I felt very comfortable being myself in my previous position, but when I moved to the corporate world, I felt like I'm not super corporate. I mean, anybody who watches me, I think, knows that. My pink hair kind of gives it away, a mile away. But I felt like I sort of needed to fit into that corporate mold and didn't feel that I did, so felt insecure around it. And so it didn't bring the people into my life who, first of all, valued me for who I am, which is the pink hair, sparkly makeup, talks a lot, but like also it has a lot of good ideas and is smart and, knows her stuff in communication. It didn't bring me the right people in my life. And I kind of had to stop and realize, as you've made this shift, again, all through insecurity, right? As I was exploring a new world, being able to step back into, no, this is who I am. And if this doesn't fit for your corporate setting, that's okay, has been really powerful for me. And I do think there's a weight, there's an energy that gets spent trying to fit into boxes that you were never really supposed to be in. Yeah.
I agree with you. I think it was the great Greek philosopher Socrates. And he said this: the key to change is to focus your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. So
That's
when you're
awesome.
building the new, it's being authentic to yourself, not trying to be someone you're not, right?
So that's awesome. Like if we can all look at, as we continue to navigate the pandemic, I do really see it as this opportunity. For me, I've had other opportunities like this in my life, but there's something about the pandemic that has stripped away all the outside noise because I'm not in contact with the outside world as much. I still am. I'm on Zoom a fair bit, but I'm not as much. So it stripped away all the noise that I didn't even necessarily notice influencing my decisions. And so I just think it's really neat opportunity for all of us to look at where's the real me in this? Where are my real desires within my business, within my team, within my personal life? And what decisions do I have to be making to get there? And I guess that speaks to your whole point about change, right? How much good that can bring to our life when we can embrace it, I guess.
Is one thing about change we can't change. That's change. I mean, change is inevitable. It's going to always happen. We can stand by and watch it happen, or we can be participants with it. We can be co-collaborators of creation. We can actually make changes on our own accord. But once again, it comes down to a decision and how we feel about it. And I know it sounds simple, but I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, Lindsay. I've never have tried to reinvent the wheel. I want to add W40 to it. I want people's cycle of life to run a little bit smoother. Take away those kinks out of it. And let's make some things a little bit more simple so that you can get a nice, good rhythm and flow going, because that is where effectiveness happens. When we're trying to twist and turn and trying to take the wheel off and create something that's really not us, we waste a lot of energy doing that. And this is where it happens with change. You have to realize that change is going to happen, but you can also happen toward change if you know how to go about doing it. And more importantly, get curious about it. Like 2021 is different. Absolutely. Well, get curious about what else can you create this year, this month, this week. What can you discover that's different? What problems can you get yourself into so you can train yourself to get stronger to deal with them? This is how we can really become, better.
Yeah. And so if for people who are kind of getting stuck there, I can see your point about surrounding yourself with change makers being so beneficial. Yeah. Because I think when you're surrounded by people who resist change, it becomes harder to see, like you were talking about seeing things from different angles. I think it gets harder to see those angles when you don't have anyone to, contribute to those conversations.
They want to protect you by protecting themselves, right? They want you not to change because they don't want to change. And then it becomes this system of holding each other's hand and holding you back from it.
Yeah. That's powerful. Okay. So my question to everyone listening is to reflect on your life, because I think we all have these people in our life. Who are those people who are trying to keep you where you are and who don't like when you're changing? Who are those people? And I'm not saying ditch them necessarily today. I won't go that far, but reflect on it. No, I don't mean reflect on ditching them right away, but reflect on how you need to show up differently in those relationships, maybe to address the issue of the comments of holding you back. I think that's really key there, Adrian.
It's very key. Yeah, you don't go out and say, "Oh, Lindsay and Adrian said ditch me."
You're out of my life. Just show them this video, and you're like, "I don't have a choice."
Okay. Hey, they said it, not me, right?
Right. And I won't ask anyone to drop the names in the chat of those people that you're ditching today. So you're off the hook. So I just want to go back to the comments here for a second. We just have a few minutes left here. So Jackie Ann saying one of the things that makes her leadership unique is her style and being genuine. Sometimes she's been told that she needs to be different and less emotional, and it almost broke her. The reason I can do what I do is because I'm able to be my authentic self. Thank goodness I had someone counter coach that silliness, which is all about finding those people in your life that you're talking about there, Adrian. Yeah.
The counter coaching thing is so important, because when someone says something negative to you, it takes many more positive things to be said to override that one negative thing. And it's so powerful. And you mentioned emotional, Jackie. And here's the thing I want to say. We live in a world right now where emotional intelligence is key.
Yeah.
What is being done is that people now are seeing things from a different human perspective that is creating innovations, creating more ideas and more connection. Right now, we're longing for human connection. So I say, yes, continue to operate from that emotional part of you, because at the end of the day, Jackie, that's why your team is going to go with you through the trenches.
Yeah.
Because you care.
I agree. And I think sometimes the messages to not are from the people who are most uncomfortable with it. And I sometimes think that's their work to do rather than yours. Is just my 2 cents here, Jackie Ann. Yeah. And I think the tides are changing. So like you said. So I just want to give one last chance for everyone listening. If you have any last questions for Adrian, and I know it takes a couple minutes for them to pop up in the chat. So while I'm waiting to see if anyone has any last questions for you, can you let us know where people can connect with you, follow your work?
Well, absolutely. Yes, you can connect with me here on LinkedIn. Just type in Adrian Starks and you just connect with me, reach out, say hello, message me. Also, you can find me on Connect Now Business Network. So go to cnbn.ca, and it's there you'll find me and find the podcast that I do as well too. And yeah, just reach out to me through LinkedIn, through cnbn.ca. And I would look forward to talking to you guys and finding a way to continue to help you along your journey of change.
That's awesome. And Adrian also has a podcast called The Purposeful Life Show that you can, that I suggest you take a peek at if you're interested in getting to know his work a little more. And so I'll just pop back on over to the chat. And so, yeah, seems like there's no last questions. So I just want to say thanks for coming out and chatting with us about embracing change, because I think it's been a year of trying to embrace change. And frankly, the news articles I was reading today, I was like, oh goodness, like this is just gonna be a ride for a while. So I think these are skills we're gonna have to continue to tap into for God knows how long, a little while.
It's gonna be a while. And for everyone today, my last thing I want to say is that I just said this earlier today, write down the word challenge. Whenever you have a perplexing problem, write down the word challenge and think about inside that word, change. It's a call for you to change your perception toward that problem or rise to the occasion and find resources to do it. So just think about that through the week. And whenever you have a problem, go through those 3 steps. Am I accepting it or am I resisting? How do I address it? And am I willing to embrace what comes afterwards?
That's awesome. Puts you right into the growth mindset, I think, that's needed. So yeah, I love that you have such a clear way to help everyone remember. So thank you. Yeah, so thanks for your time today. And for everyone listening, so we will be back again next Wednesday, 6 p.m. like usual, mostly usual. And I'll be speaking with Martin Buckland, who has done a live with me before about resumes. So Martin Buckland is an executive career coach, and he's going to be speaking about optimizing your LinkedIn profile. So if that's something that's of interest to you, you can join us here on my profile again next week at 6 p.m. And also, so we've started announcing now our LinkedIn Live interviews in my weekly newsletter, and there's a couple different ways, but the easiest way to sign up for that, if you're interested, again, is lindsaylapaquette.com/podcast. It's up at the very top, and I send out a weekly video, my podcast episode of the week, and the LinkedIn Live of the week that now has a button so you can click on it to find it directly, which hopefully will help with some of the problems of people finding the lives. So you can sign up there if you're interested. And thanks everyone for watching. I appreciate everyone's loyalty. There's lots of names that come back every week. So thank you. And it's been great getting to know about you and your work, Adrian. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. And thank you for your work.
Yeah, thanks. So I'll see everyone back next week. Bye.
Bye.